There was a time when presidential children stayed out of the spotlight, living quiet lives away from public scrutiny. But Barron Trump is changing that narrative. At just 19 years old, he's not only the youngest son of a former and current US president, but also carving out his own path in business and public life. This video explores the extraordinary lifestyle of Barron Trump. Let's begin with the staggering wealth that surrounds Barron Trump. At just 18, his name is already tied to an estimated net worth of around $80 million. That figure isn't because of any business ventures he's led himself, but rather the considerable assets wrapped up in the Trump family's financial world. Real estate holdings, investments, and trusts that have been structured with long-term wealth in mind. His father, Donald Trump, has built a brand that spans luxury properties, golf resorts, licensing deals, and political capital. Whether you support him or not, the empire is real, and Barron is positioned to inherit a piece of it. What sets Barron apart from other children of wealthy public figures is how insulated he's been. Compared to his older siblings, Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany, Barron has largely stayed out of the spotlight. He didn't take part in his father's campaigns in any active way, and aside from a few carefully released photos, most of the public has only seen glimpses of him. But behind that low profile is a clear trajectory. Reports from outlets like Bloomberg and Yahoo suggest that trusts and assets have already been allocated in his name, which isn't unusual in high net worth families. What's unusual is the scale. He's lived in places like Trump Tower in New York and the White House, and he's been raised in a world where luxury isn't an occasional treat, it's the baseline. His mother, Melania Trump, has made sure to keep his personal life private, especially when it comes to media exposure. That privacy, however, hasn't stopped analysts from tracking his financial stake in the family brand. The Trump Organization isn't just a name and buildings, it's a complex network of assets, many of which will eventually pass down. Barron is the youngest heir to that fortune, and though he hasn't shown any public interest in stepping into a business role yet, the wealth is already there. For someone his age, it's not about building from the ground up, it's about navigating what's already been built. He may never need to lead a boardroom or launch a company, but the structure is in place for him to be one of the richest young figures in America, whether he chooses to make the headlines or not. From a young age, Barron's life was anything but ordinary. He was born on March 20th, 2006 in New York City, the only child of Donald and Melania Trump. Unlike his older half-siblings, Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany, Barron didn't grow up juggling divorce, step-parents, or a rotation of schools. His childhood played out almost entirely within the golden-plated walls of Trump Tower on 5th Avenue, in a penthouse that stretched across 3 floors and had views of the Central Park. For most kids, a playroom might mean a small corner with some Legos. For Barron, it was a floor in a skyscraper. Melania kept a close eye on how he was raised. She once told Parenting magazine that she preferred not to use a nanny full-time and believe in being a hands-on mom. While Donald Trump was busy with business deals and public appearances, Melania stayed focused on giving Barron structure. Homework, meals, school drop-offs. There were no regular paparazzi shots of him being paraded around for attention, and that was deliberate. His early years were controlled quite by design. Still, Barron was never just another private school kid. He attended Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School in Manhattan, one of the city's elite institutions where tuition costs more than most people make in a year. It's the kind of place where alumni include people like Sarah Michelle Gellar and Herman Melville. But what really marked Barron's childhood as different was what came next: his father's campaign for the presidency. When Donald Trump won the election in 2016, Barron was just 10 years old. He became the first boy to live in the White House since John F. Kennedy Jr. That alone made headlines, but what stood out more was how Melania delayed moving in with him. She stayed behind in New York for several months after the inauguration, specifically so Barron could finish the school year in Manhattan before transferring to St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Maryland. It wasn't a decision made for optics, it was made for him, and that choice said more about their parenting style than any public statement. By the time Barron finally did move into the White House, he was already used to being watched but not exposed. He kept a low profile, made no press appearances, and didn't give interviews. Still, his presence was noted, and not because just he was tall for his age. Education has always been a priority in Barron's life. Even when his father was in the White House, Melania Trump made it clear that she wanted to keep Barron's schooling as stable and private as possible. When Donald Trump became president in 2017, Barron didn't immediately move into the White House. He stayed in New York to finish out the school year at Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School in Manhattan. It was a small detail at the time, but it showed how his education wasn't going to take a backseat to politics. More recently, Barron graduated from Oxbridge Academy in West Palm Beach in May 2024. The school, which was founded by a billionaire and offers rigorous academics with a low student-to-teacher ratio, is known for keeping things grounded. It's not just a school for wealthy kids to coast through, it has expectations. Barron kept a low profile during his time there, but he was active enough in student life to make it clear he wasn't just being shuffled through. Graduation was attended quietly by Melania, away from any public spectacle, just the way she's always handled things. Now, he's at NYU's Stern School of Business, studying, fittingly, business. It's a path that makes sense given the family background. But what stands out is that he's not going the fully private route. Stern is a serious program in the middle of a city that moves fast. He reportedly commutes from Trump Tower to campus, which isn't the easiest way to handle college life, but it speaks to the balance he's keeping between family and school. He's not tucked away in a bubble or on some isolated estate, he's attending lectures, working through a competitive program, and doing it while still connected to the Trump orbit. He doesn't show up in the press with party photos or headline-making antics. You won't see him doing interviews or trying to launch a brand at 18. That might change down the line, but for now, Barron seems focused on getting through college like a lot of other students. Head down, keep moving. And while his last name guarantees attention, his approach to school so far has been low-key and practical, shaped more by structure than by show. Beyond academics, Barron is making strides in the business world. He might still be a teenager, but growing up around the Trump brand, he's had a front-row seat to real estate deals, licensing agreements, and the kind of business dinners where the conversation never really stops. It's not surprising that at just 18, he decided to try something on his own. In the summer of 2024, Barron co-founded a company called Trump, Fulcher, and Roxburgh Capital Incorporation. It was set up as a boutique real estate investment firm with ambitions to focus on private capital and high-end development. The venture caught media attention immediately, not just because of the Trump name, but because Barron was listed as a founding member alongside two lesser-known investors with connections to the Florida property scene. The company didn't last long, though. Once Donald Trump began his campaign for a second term and returned to office, the firm was quietly dissolved, likely to avoid any conflict of interest. It wasn't a failure so much as a pause, a reminder that Barron's last name still comes with strings attached. Still, it showed that he's not just coasting on his family's name, he's clearly interested in money, markets, and how digital assets are changing things. Around the same time, he appeared on a registry for World Liberty Financial, a blockchain-based group focused on decentralized finance. Listed as a DeFi visionary, Barron's name was included in a promotional push aimed at younger investors. Whether or not he was directly involved in the group's projects is unclear, but the fact that he was connected to it says a lot about where his interests lie. Barron hasn't made any big media splash about any of this. There is no reality show, no public launch events, no big statements. He seems to be testing the waters, figuring out where he fits in the business world without turning it into a spectacle. That's not easy when your family name is printed on everything from hotels to steaks, but he's clearly trying to write his own chapter, and even short-lived ventures can be part of that process. For now, it looks like he's more interested in learning by doing than being handed a board seat. That alone makes him different from what most people might expect. Barron's impact isn't limited to business, he's also influencing politics and media in a way that feels very much of his generation. Unlike his older siblings, who took center stage during Donald Trump's political rise, Barron has stayed mostly in the background. But that doesn't mean he's been uninvolved. During his father's most recent campaign activity, Barron reportedly offered advice on how to better connect with younger voters, specifically Gen Z, through platforms they actually use. It's not a stretch, he's grown up online, surrounded by the constant churn of internet culture, and he understands the tone and timing that work in those spaces better than most political advisors do. That includes recognizing where people are actually paying attention, not traditional TV or press briefings, but podcasts, live streams, and TikTok commentary. He's been credited with nudging his father's team to think more in those terms. One of the more talked about examples was Donald Trump's unexpected connection with Adin Ross, a popular Twitch streamer and internet personality. The collaboration seemed random on the surface, but it wasn't. Barron is familiar with Ross's content and understood that getting in front of those kinds of audiences wasn't just about numbers, it was about tone. Reaching out through streamers and online creators meant speaking directly to the people who aren't going to read campaign emails or attend rallies. Trump appeared on a live call with Ross in early 2024, and while it was brief, it stirred conversation online and opened a new kind of visibility with a younger crowd. Barron's role here isn't formal, he doesn't hold any title, and there's no official position on the campaign. But that's part of the point. He doesn't need to be front and center to influence decisions behind the scenes. In a space where authenticity matters more than polish, Barron's instincts carry weight because they're grounded in what he actually knows. He's not trying to be a political strategist, he's just part of the demographic campaigns are desperate to understand. And in this case, that insight has already shaped some of the Trump camp's newer media plays. Whether he chooses to step into politics more publicly one day or not, his behind-the-scenes role has already started to change the way that political messaging reaches younger Americans. Despite his high-profile background, Barron maintains a relatively private life. He's the son of a president, grandson of a Slovenian model, and a member of one of the most publicly scrutinized families in the world. But you wouldn't know it by how rarely he shows up in the spotlight. Most of his public appearances are few and far between, and when they do happen, they tend to catch attention for what not he says, but simply because he's there. That's been part of his pattern since childhood. Visible, but not available. One of the most recent examples came in early 2025, shortly after his father's second inauguration. Barron, then a freshman at NYU, was seen outside the university's Washington Square campus in Manhattan, walking alongside Secret Service agents and a friend from class. There were no press conferences, no prepared remarks, no curated photo ops, just a young guy in jeans and a hoodie, walking into a building like any other college student. Still, the photos made their rounds online, not because of anything scandalous, but mostly because people were surprised to see how tall he had gotten. At 6'7", Barron towers over almost everyone around him, including his own father, Donald Trump, who stands at around 6'3". Physical stature aside, people who have met him or attended school with him have described him as quiet, respectful, and pretty reserved. Teachers at his previous school, Oxbridge Academy, noted that he kept to himself, but was polite and on time. Not exactly the qualities most would expect from someone raised in penthouses and presidential lamos. And while the internet has spun off countless memes and theories about Barron over the years, ranging from harmless jokes to flat-out nonsense, he's never commented on any of it publicly. Not once. That kind of silence isn't just rare for someone in his position, it's practically unheard of. At home, Barron reportedly still lives with Melania Trump when not on campus. The two have kept a close bond, and she's made it clear in interviews that her focus has always been on protecting his personal life from public intrusion. She was rarely seen during campaign events, and when she did appear, it was always on her own terms. That boundary seems to have rubbed off on Barron. He doesn't post on social media, doesn't show up at celebrity events, and doesn't seem in any rush to change that. He's also shown a bit of a sense of humor when caught on camera at major events. Subtle reactions during speeches or expressions that suggest he's aware of how surreal it all is. But he's never tried to cash in on it. No interviews, no book deals, no paid appearances. For someone with so many connections, Barron's public life is defined mostly by what he avoids. And maybe that's the point. When the spotlight is a given, staying grounded becomes its own kind of statement. Outside of his professional endeavors, Barron has a range of interests that paint a more normal picture than people might expect. When your last name is Trump, it's easy for assumptions to take over. You know, private jets, bodyguards, events with marble floors and gold trim, but the things Barron is into sound more like what you'd hear from any teenager with time, curiosity, and access to decent resources. Soccer has been a major part of his life for years. While living in Washington, D.C. during his father's presidency, Barron played for D.C. United's Youth Academy. That's not just a rec team, it's a competitive program that's produced pro-level talent. It means regular practices, games against other elite clubs, and a lot of commitment. He didn't just play because he had nothing else to do. He trained, traveled, and competed, and by all accounts, he took it seriously. There were photos from matches, moments of him in uniform mid-game, and reports that he was well liked by teammates and coaches. That kind of dedication says something about him beyond the headlines. He's also shown an interest in tech, and not in a vague, like Skagit sort of way. Donald Trump has spoken a few times, offhandedly but clearly, about Barron being good with computers and understanding things most adults struggle with. According to people close to the family, Barron's especially drawn to programming and systems, not flashy app building or chasing crypto trends, but actual tech mechanics. He's grown up with access to just about every kind of tool imaginable, but it seems like he gravitates toward things he can figure out, build, or customize. That tracks with how most teenagers explore tech when they're not just using it for entertainment. So, how does the youngest son of a former and current US president navigate a life filled with wealth, education, and public scrutiny? Leave your thoughts in the comments.